All right, thank you. I want to be the first to welcome you all to our financial aid and FA workshop that we're having today. As you know, we'll be talking about different forms of financial aid and answer any questions that you all have. And before we get started, I really want to go ahead and get into our webinar etiquette. So, as Brandy said, please mute yourselves as you enter the chat and as you're turning your audio on. And if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We'll do our best to answer them as soon as we can. If not, you can wait till the end if you want to ask your questions. Also, please abide by what we say, or if we have to, we'll kick you out. But I don't think it'll ever have to come to that. So I would like to also introduce our different presenters for tonight. First, we have Ms. Keela Hall, representing CFNC, College Foundation of North Carolina. Then we have Ms. Desire Spurgeon, representing Carolina College Advising Corps from Dudley High School. And we have Ms. Brandy Kennedy, and she will be representing Say Yes Guilford. Also, because I just mentioned this, I want to make sure that I go through all our community partners on this. So we have the College Foundation of North Carolina, Guilford County Schools, and Guilford Parent Academy, Say Yes Guilford, and Carolina College Advising Corps. And now I'll hand it over to our presenters.
All right, so thank you, Frank, for introducing everyone, and thank you all again for joining tonight. Again, my name is Brandy Kennedy, and I serve as the Assistant Director of Student Outreach and Post-Secondary Access with Say Yes Guilford. And this is just an overview of what we're going to be covering tonight. Of course, you all tuned in to hear some more information about your FAFSA and to answer some of those frequently asked questions. But tonight, we're going to be talking a little bit about what is financial aid, the different types of financial aid. What are some commonly frequent asked questions or different errors that people face when they're completing this application? What do I even need to apply? And then we're also going to talk about some tips and tools that you can best use, and also create a timeline that'll help you know when you're supposed to be doing what in regards to the FAFSA process. All right. So what is financial aid? I think it's important that we get the like the book definition, right? You know, when we used to look in a dictionary a long, long, long time ago. But and when looking and what is financial aid, I think it's important to emphasize that it is not just restricted to grants or scholarships or the FAFSA, but that it includes a combination of all of these. So grants, scholarships, loans, and work study. These are all things that help offset the cost of college and to make it affordable. So they help aid in paying for the financial piece of college, hence the title. And so, as I just mentioned, there are four different types of financial aid. If you don't mind going back, Desire. Um, and we're going to briefly cover each of those today. So we have loans, we have grants, we have work study and scholarships. So some of you all have probably definitely heard of loans and may have not heard of the other things, but we're going to go over those things today. And so, starting with the first and probably the most common form of financial aid, we have scholarships and grants. And the reason why you'll see that these here are looped together is that I want to emphasize that these are things that you do not have to pay back to the institution or the federal government. So, today specifically, we're talking about how you can get loans through the federal government or how you can get these grants through the federal government. And so specifically, when you apply for the FAFSA, you are applying to receive what's called a federal Pell Grant. So doing that application allows them to determine what you are eligible for from the federal government in the form of a Pell Grant. Again, I want to reemphasize you don't have to pay these back. When doing that FAFSA, it's also important to recognize that this is what like rolls the ball on you begin being considered for state grants. It's also important that you have done your RDS application to ensure that you are considered for North Carolina specific need-based grants. And I really want to emphasize that you don't have to pay these back. And so now moving on to one of the other forms of financial aid, we have work study. So this is a form of financial aid that some of you all may not have heard of, but it's a federal partnership that allows students to work on campus part-time to get money to help support their tuition or whatever else, whatever other expenses they like to use it for. And so it's important to really emphasize that you must do your FAFSA to be considered for work study jobs. So this is a question that will appear on your FAFSA, and we'll talk a little bit later about resources to ensure that you don't skip over that question and answer it incorrectly. But each school has a different process as far as determining how your placement will be for work study. And so you will get an allotment of work study funding every year if you qualify, that will allow the university to pay you from that pot of money through the way of an on-campus job. And so it works differently at each institution as far as how you go about getting those on-campus jobs. Some institutions have like a job portal, or they begin to reach out to those students early in the summer. But that's typically how it works. And feel free, Tequila or Desire, to add anything else on.
Unmute myself here. But thanks, Brandy. I think that pretty much covered it. The only thing I would add is, even if you're not sure of work study, because they do have an unknown option or unsure option on there, I would say indicate yes regardless, because even when it comes back in your package, you still have the option to decline it once it's in your package. You do not have to get a job. But if you go ahead and put no on your application, they will not even consider you for it. If you put unsure, then you won't be you may be considered, but that's only if they have things left over. So you want to put yes, even if you're not sure, because again, you can still decline it later on. You don't have to choose to take it in your package, just like a loan. You don't have to choose to accept it.
And the only thing that I like to add is that many jobs on campus that you're doing for work study are minimum wage. Sometimes a student can be paid a little bit more, but there's some amazing jobs on campus. I recall when I was a student, I worked for Housing and Resident Life. And so that was a really neat job. And I also worked for the Student Center. So there are lots of great jobs on campus.
I'll second that. There are amazing opportunities. Some schools have, if you're going to a research campus, it may be like research positions, which a lot of the times, or some of the times, it can be hard to find an internship. But sometimes if it's a work study where they offer research positions, which is what I did for 2 years, I was able to get paid for research. I didn't even have to find an internship because the research I worked under was paid for at an actual medical school. So definitely you don't want to count yourself out before you even know what's available for you, because I only was able to find those paid research opportunities through work study. So don't count yourself out. I definitely would recommend just putting yes, even if you're not sure.
Yeah, I would echo that. Don't close the door before it even begins. And so my on-campus job, I only qualified for work study a few years during my time in college, but I worked actually at the pharmacy school, answering the phone. So that was as you can see, it looks a variety of different ways. And so I'll hand it over to Tequila, who began discussing loans.
Thanks, Brandy. So I want to talk to you a little bit about loans. Loans can be good if you use them in a responsible manner. So I definitely want them to be the last resort for you. So look at all the free money, the gift aid that my colleagues are talking about this evening. And then if you need a loan, you can certainly look at those resources. But I know one of the things that we're going to be talking to you guys about is the FAFSA a little bit later on. So even if you want to be considered for loans, you must complete the FAFSA or the free application for federal student aid that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But loans can be used in a positive manner to help you pay for college. And then, when you receive your award notification from the financial aid office, I will tell you that, again, just because you're receiving your financial aid award is telling you what you're eligible for, does not mean that you have to accept the full amount. So borrow responsibly. Don't borrow any more than you absolutely have to. And so just because you borrow 1 year does not mean that you have to borrow for all 2 years or 4 years or however long that you're going to be enrolled. So I do want to talk a little bit about federal loans, and we're also going to talk about private loans this evening. So when we talk about federal loans, there are what we call subsidized and unsubsidized loans. And I want to just explain to you how those work. So when you hear me talking about subsidized loans, that is a loan that the student, not the parent, the student is borrowing for their education, and one in which the federal government is paying the interest as long as you're in school and during your grace period. And then on the award notification that you get from financial aid, you might even see the term unsubsidized loan. So you might have one or the other or a combination of the two. So for the unsub loan, it's not a need-based loan. Unfortunately, the federal government is not paying the interest on that particular loan. So you're given the option to make interest payments as is accumulating, or you can capitalize on the interest. So all the interest you haven't been paying for all 2 years or 4 years or however long is going to be added onto your principal loan amount once you go into repayment. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. And then, of course, loans have to be paid back. So that is something that you're going to have to repay. So you have 10 years to repay. There's no prepayment penalties out there for you. And also want to let you know about private loans. So there are some private loans out there. And private loans, or you might hear the term alternative loan, that allows you to borrow above and beyond what you're eligible for in your federal direct loans. So you just want to be careful and think about what your educational goals are. So I know right now you're just thinking about the first step, so undergraduate studies, but you want to start thinking about, based upon what you want to study, will graduate school be something that you need to consider? And if so, we just don't want to get bogged down in a whole lot of loan debt right now. So private loans are different from the federal loans, and your federal loans are going to be your best option right now. And so as we look at interest rates for the federal loans right now, they are pretty low. So for the sub and unsub loans for students, the interest rate is 2.75% right now. And then, of course, for the parent loan, which we call the PLUS loan, parent loan for undergraduate student, for that particular loan, that allows a parent to borrow for a dependent student's education. So as a parent, you can borrow up to the full cost of education, less any aid that your student's receiving. But right now, that interest rate is 5.30. And that's for students who are in school right now. We will not know the interest rates for you guys until on or after July 1. But those interest rates are fixed, so they're not variable. Next slide, please.
Um, I would just add, as far as unsubsidized and subsidized loans, one of the ways that I often thought about it is, well, as Tequila mentioned, loans are to be used as a last resort. But when think about unsubsidized loans, I think about like uncool. Like, it isn't cool to me that if I borrow $1,000 by the time I graduate, because it gains interest, as Tequila mentioned, I may owe $1,500 that I owe back. Whereas subsidized is, I like to think of it as that's what's up, as in like, if I borrow $1,000, I will be expected to repay that exact amount of $1,000 prior to it gaining interest after you graduate.
That's a great way to remember it. So just keep in mind what Brandy was saying, how to remember subsidized and unsubsidized. And so just that's a great way. Thanks, Brandy. Desire, do you want to add anything before we move on?
I don't know why I'm having trouble with unmuting this, but I don't really have anything to add. I think y'all did great with covering that.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk about additional ways to cover costs. So one of the things you see listed is the NC 529 College Savings Plan. This allows you to save for all different types of college expenses like tuition, fees, room and board, books, supplies, other equipment, could even be a computer. So a lot of times when people think about 529 accounts, they think they have to save for every single expense. But even if you just use it for books, or just a couple of years of tuition, or even for computers, that's still going to be something that's going to be beneficial. So as you're getting graduation money, or birthday or Christmas money, you can have some of your family members to put money into their 529 plan to save for educational expenditures. And then, of course, there are students and parents that might, take advantage of their personal savings to help pay for college. And another one that I want to just highlight would be payment plans. So many colleges are going to have payment plans, or you might hear tuition payment plans, installment payment plans. And they allow you to pay out of your current income, but you're not going to pay for it all at one time. So you can pay as you go. My advice to you, if you start a payment plan or want to begin a payment plan, start at the beginning. So whenever that payment plan payment starts, start right then so you don't have to catch up. Now, usually you have to pay like an enrollment fee to participate in the payment plan, but they are interest free, which is an alternative to borrowing. So you don't have to worry about interest. So if you're interested in finding out if a college has a payment plan, definitely, of course, financial aid, they'll be able to share information, the bursar's office, the cashier's office, they'll be able to share information about payment plan opportunities that are out there. And they'll give you several options. So you want to choose the payment plan that's comfortable for you and that you'll be able to stick to. Next slide, please. So let's talk about some common FAQs, frequently asked questions. So we're going to talk about this maybe several times as we go through the presentation this evening. So the first one we see is, which parent's tax information do I use on the FAFSA? So as we talk about who are parents and who needs to put the information on the FAFSA. So when we're thinking about the FAFSA, we really want to know information for the custodial parent. So that's the parent information that we're looking for. What tax year do I use to complete the FAFSA? Great question. So you're going to hear my colleague talk to you about prior year, so 2 years prior to enrollment. So if you're a senior right now and you're on the webinar, we're going to be using 2019 tax information. Which school year do I apply for? Okay, so we're right now looking for the 2021-2022 FAFSA filing year. And so as you go to the FAFSA website, you are going to see that financial aid offices are currently in 2 different years. So make sure you complete the correct FAFSA year. So if you're a senior, you're doing the 2021-2022 FAFSA application. Do I complete this application every year? Absolutely. So the first time you'll complete it is as soon as you can on or after October 1 of the senior year. And so anytime now you're able to do it. And of course, if you want to be considered for federal and state grants, federal loans, federal work study. And so, and if you want to continue to be considered for those types of aid, you'll need to complete the FAFSA, so next year you won't do the long form, but you'll do the renewal form. And so just want to make sure that you're aware of that. And then some schools will use the FAFSA to determine eligibility for institutional aid. Do both parents need to create a FSA ID, so a federal student aid ID? It's okay if both parents want to actually create an FSA ID, but when we get to the signature part of the FAFSA application, then of course only one parent needs to actually use their FSA ID for the student. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. If I have 2 children in school, what do I do? So if you have 2 children in school who are going to be in college, you're actually going to do 2 FAFSA applications. Although you're the same parent or parents, of course, each student, they're different. So you'll do 2 FAFSAs. How many schools can I select on the FAFSA? So you can list up to 10 colleges that you want to receive your FAFSA information. So just want to make sure you're aware of that. Next slide. All right, so we talked about some of the frequently asked questions on the FAFSA. So let's talk about some common errors. So you don't want to make these mistakes on the FAFSA. So on the FAFSA form, it will ask for Social Security information, so the Social Security number. There is a Social Security data match that's done, so we need to make sure that we're providing the correct information. So I know sometimes students may not know their Social Security number. So even if you have to get your Social Security card out, you want to make sure that you're putting the right information, because we have to make sure we don't have any conflicting information. Completing the wrong year. So again, like I mentioned to you before, make sure you're doing the correct FAFSA form for this upcoming year. Using the wrong tax information is a common one. Read the questions thoroughly so that you put in the right information. So just know that you don't have to do the FAFSA all at one time. You can start, you can stop, you can come back to it. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. And then just one more thing, as we're talking about FAFSA, I just want to let you know that, there's helpful tips, so if you don't know exactly what the FAFSA application is asking, you do have those tips. Now, you do see a QR code on my screen here. This is going to give you step-by-step instructions, or it's a step-by-step guide as far as the questions that you'll need to complete on the FAFSA application. I'll just pause just for a moment in case you want to capture that. All right, next slide, Desire. So, if you don't remember everything that we talked about tonight, the one main takeaway I want you to think about is the FAFSA is free. That's why they call it the free application for federal student aid. You should not pay anyone to help you complete the form. So be careful. There's lots of organizations out there that want to get you to pay money for that, or also pay money to help you find scholarship information. So just want to make sure you know the FAFSA is free. Don't get scammed. The official website for FAFSA is fafsa.ed.gov. So again, fafsa.ed.gov.
I will add here that there is typically an app. There was a message that went out a few weeks ago that the app was currently down, I believe, until January. So if in the past you've had siblings or other of your children use the app, that won't be an option right now this year. But in the past has been an option and will probably continue to be in the future.
Thank y'all for that information. So we'll move on into what you all need to do or what you need to gather so that you can apply for financial aid. All right, so as Ms. Tequila was talking about with the FSA ID or the Federal Student Aid ID number, this is just going to be what I just call your login information. So you need to create an FSA ID before you're able to go in that application, students. And on the next page, I'll show you what items you need in order to create an FSA ID. But again, you just need to this is just step one, make the ID so that you can actually access the application. Some students I know access it without if they just enter their information, but honestly, the same information you would enter through kind of the back door is the same thing you need to enter your FSA ID anyway. So you're going to need a FSA ID regardless, because this is how you sign that application. So student needs one, and at least one parent will need one to both sign their FAFSA applications. Parents, if you had an older child who's gone to college before, or if you went to college yourself, you may already have an FSA ID if you did the FAFSA. Even if it was 10, 20 years ago, that FSA ID is connected to your Social Security, so you don't need to make another account. If you don't remember that login information, or at least your email address or your security questions to reset it, you could just call FSA ID and they would just ask you for some personal information to reset that for you. But again, parents, if you have one, you will need one to sign their applications. Students, seniors, you'll need to create one. And that's pretty much the gist of that. Oh, save your login information. That's one of the biggest things. You will need to complete this FAFSA application every year. Even if it's just a renewal, you'll still need that same login information. So just make sure you're saving it somewhere where you keep really important information, so that you can access this application without resetting everything every year. So some of the documents that you need in order to apply for both your FSA ID number, ID login information, and then the FAFSA application itself is your social security number. So students must have a social security number to be able to access this application, or to even be eligible for it, or some type of eligible non-citizenship number, which typically they give you that, social, or just again, your eligible non-citizenship number. So you must be an eligible non-citizen or a citizen in order to do this. Students. Parents, if you have a social security number, it's again best that you make that FSA ID so you can just go ahead and sign the application. But parents are not required to have a social security number in order for students with social security numbers to be able to qualify for this aid. So again, as long as the student has that social or that eligible non-citizenship number, you're good to still do your FAFSA. There are other ways for parents to sign if they don't have a social or eligible non-citizenship number. Driver's license is also another thing just to keep handy. If you don't have one, that's fine. Students, again, just alien registration number or permanent resident number, those are just forms of the eligible non-citizenship numbers. So UCIS, ARN, those type of other numbers would be counted as eligible non-citizenship numbers that are usable for in order to do the FAFSA application. And then your 2019 federal tax returns that will be used on this year's, which is the 2021-2022 application. So remember, it is not the 2020 taxes. A lot of people have that misconception. It is 2019. They go back prior year. So just make sure that you have these documents, and if you do, you're good to go. If there are any other issues, there are, other special circumstances. But as long as you at least have that social security number, then you're eligible to apply for this federal aid. So even if you don't have tax information, your parents didn't work, any special situations like that, doesn't matter, you're still eligible to do it. It just may be a different process for you. All right, so some other tips that we wanted to add for other ways to get financial aid for college is doing the CSS profile. Not many colleges require it, so just check and make to see if your college requires this. Just from the top of my head, I know schools like UNC Chapel Hill, Duke, they require the CSS profile in addition to the FAFSA application, just as an extra way to see maybe where additional finances are going that the FAFSA does not capture. So again, the FAFSA is really only going to look at that 2019 information. CSS profile may capture, where your money is going for medical bills or other expenses that the FAFSA doesn't necessarily take into account. So if your school requires that, that means you do have to do this, but typically I would say CSS is for your benefit and not for your downfall, because they are taking into account where those other expenses from your parents' income is going. And also just check to make sure, once you do your FAFSA, check to make sure that you were or were not flagged for verification. As I was saying about verification, just make sure if you were flagged for verification, not everyone will be. But if you were, don't worry, it doesn't mean anything bad. They just need to verify the information that was on your FAFSA form is correct. Typically, a lot of students I see who get flagged for verification, it just means you didn't use the IRS data retrieval tool, means linking your parents' tax information to the IRS, or your own student information wasn't linked to the IRS. So nothing to be alarmed about. You'll just have to go through with each college that you sent your FAFSA to verify to make sure everything was correct. And then the last thing from this is, the last tip I wanted to share with this is just to make sure that you create all of your portals with your colleges once you apply, so that you can actually access your financial aid awards. A lot of students do their FAFSA in a timely manner. They do their CSS profile, but they don't go back and make sure they have access all of their college portals for all the institutions they sent their financial aid to. So if you're applying to 10 schools, you're sending your FAFSA to 10 schools, you want to make sure you're accessing and setting your password and usernames and activating all of those college portals so that you can actually see the award that they're going to offer you. So you can, make a well-informed decision with all of your money, all of your scholarships, all of your institutional aid, to help you with that process. So please make sure, I feel like that's one of the biggest things that people overlook in the process. They're like, they did this, they did this, they did this, but they forget to go back and check from every school what they are offering them. Okay. All right, so I just spoke about this briefly, the IRS data retrieval tool. Once you enter your parents' information in that parent portion while y'all are doing the FAFSA, if you fill out a certain amount of questions, it's only a few about the tax, how they file taxes and things of that sort, and then they'll give you a blue button that says link to IRS. That is the IRS data retrieval tool. It is very easy, very simple, and very accurate. If you were going to manually fill it in anyway, I recommend using this tool because one, you don't have to sit there and waste time entering everything in manually, but because they're going to pull it in directly from the IRS. But two, you can avoid verification. Like, who wouldn't want to do that? Verification, like I said, it's not anything wrong with that process. I was in the verification process all 4 years that I was an undergrad, but it's very time consuming, especially if you have a lot of college choices. With the IRS data retrieval tool, again, skips verification because it's already verified from the IRS. They're pulling it directly from them. So you'll just go ahead and get all of your financial aid packages without having to be verified. So I recommend using that tool if you can, 100%. All right, so once you submit your FAFSA, what next? So again, verification may come in. If you want to avoid this, use the IRS data retrieval tool. It will make your life much easier. I'm not kidding. Remember to review every single financial aid package for those colleges you're interested in. So make sure that everything has been submitted. For some schools, I just wanted to note that you do have, your financial aid packages will not come until you are accepted to an institution. So if you have not been accepted to the school, do not look for a financial aid package from them. But if you were accepted, some schools do require that you accept their offer. So make sure you know which schools require that you accept their offer first before they allow you to see your package from them. Typically, it's schools who don't have non-binding decisions, which plenty of them do. So as long as the decision is non-binding, you can go ahead and accept their admissions offer so that you can at least see your package. That doesn't mean you're locked into that school. You still can make your choice in the spring, but once you receive that decision, that acceptance letter, go ahead and accept the offer so that you can get your financial aid package from them. Again, keep up with your portals. You must keep up with these portals. This is going to be how you see everything, your decision, what you're missing, what's next, how you register for like open house. Mostly, a lot of that spring stuff is going to be through that portal and what the next steps are. So make sure you do this for each college so that you can, again, make that informed decision and have all the information possible before you decide on where you're going in May. And check your email. That is the biggest thing. I know it seems really simple, but I know a lot of high school students, just from working at one, are not very used to emailing. I know text message and stuff like that is y'all's thing, but email for college is literally going to be the first mode of communication for everything. So go ahead and get in that habit now. When you're doing all of this, applying and accepting and all of that, they're communicating with you through your email. So make sure you check your email daily, several times a day, for updates from your college, updates from financial aid, updates about even scholarships. They're going to send it to your email address, whatever email address you put on there. And I recommend using a Gmail and not just any other email that you check frequently other than your school email address. I say this because your school email address will expire once you graduate from high school. So if you put that as your primary contact method, if you use that email for scholarships and other things, you're not going to get any of those emails once you graduate. So please use Gmail, iCloud, something that you will have access to once you are done with your high school when you're doing anything college related. All right, so I don't know what happened to the QR code. Let me see if it's on the next slide. Nope. So there was a QR code here, but I guess y'all can just, I don't know, should I drop this in the chat?
Yeah, I'll place it in the chat. Give me just a second.
Okay. So there's a poll everywhere question. It just asks, have you started the FAFSA? You can indicate yes or no, just so we can kind of get a measure of what our crowd has gone on.
I put it in the chat already.
Okay.
Oh,
thank you, Warshay. So just answer that question. And here are just some resources here to help you understand financial aid further than what we've presented here, and then to kind of walk you through step by step on creating an FSA ID.
And make sure you all do complete that poll. Desire is just important because we want to gauge, have you all started your FAFSA, or did you all attend this event to help begin that process? So no, not yet. So yeah, so thank y'all. Remember, it opened October 1st, and oftentimes there are priority deadlines for colleges that may vary so that you can be considered for the most amount of funding.
Yes. I will tell you, some colleges last year, which I wasn't even aware of myself before becoming a college advisor last year, some of my students who did their FAFSA very early actually received money in their award packages just for completing their FAFSA early, like nothing else. It was free money. They didn't have to pay back. They didn't have to be Pell eligible. They didn't have to do anything else. All they were looking at was the date that they completed their FAFSA, and it said early FAFSA award. $1,000, boom, just for doing their FAFSA early. So again, even if you feel like, hey, I'm not going to get anything back, or what's the point of me doing this? If anything, you could at least qualify for an early FAFSA award. So all right, so this is another resource we have here if y'all want to scan that QR code.
I believe that goes with the step-by-step guide that you mentioned earlier as well.
Okay. So just in case y'all didn't get that, here it is again, the step-by-step guide to help you out with the FAFSA.
And then there's some, we'll address questions in the chat, but there are a lot of parents of juniors asking what they can do, and I would just say be prepared. Begin preparing for October 1st of your student's senior year, and just knowing what documents would be needed to apply, and this will be available later if you joined us late.
And Brandy, I'll also say not just getting prepared for FAFSA, but also it's a good time for them to start looking for scholarship opportunities, and just to see what scholarships are out there and what they're looking for.
I agree.
Definitely would say that.
I certainly agree.
So I just want to talk to you guys a little bit about the timeline for financial aid. So right now, if you're a student, or if you're the student and you're a senior, you'll see the first circle is just talking about completing your FAFSA and making sure, like Desire said, create an FSA ID. And again, just a reminder that FAFSA did open October 1. So I don't know if we mentioned this before, but just make sure you know if the colleges that you're applying to have any priority filing dates, and if so, you want to make sure you're adhering to those. Next, we want to talk about just you're going to be receiving your student aid report or your SAR report, and that's kind of like a summary of everything that you put on your FAFSA form, and also will provide you with your EFC, your expected family contribution. And then, of course, if you are selected for verification, I think Desire touched on verification a little bit. But if you are selected for verification, just don't freak out about it. I will tell you that the colleges are going to tell you exactly what you need to do. So some of them will do verification in-house. So they have members of their staff that handle that. There are some colleges that might use a third-party servicer or vendor. And if they do, they're going to let you know about that, so that you're not just randomly getting something from someone you're not sure if it's a legitimate resource. They're going to tell you if they use someone outside of their financial aid office to do verification. And usually it's just something really small that they're trying to verify, just information maybe that was reported. So I will tell you, get that information back to them as soon as possible so they can continue to process your financial aid award. So don't worry about it. Doesn't mean that you necessarily did anything wrong. It just means that they have to verify information that was reported. Next is, await financial aid offers or your packages from the college or universities. You might want to inquire about how you should expect to receive that award. So it may be that you're assigned into a portal. There are some colleges that I serve that may send that in email format. Some will send, well, not as many as there were in the past through the mail on a paper award to incoming freshmen, but most colleges that I serve use some type of electronic method to communicate about financial offers for colleges and universities. And like Desire mentioned to you before, and also Brandy, is that you don't have to accept everything that's in your package, but they're telling you everything that you can be, that you're being considered for to be able to help you pay for college. So just know that. So you can accept or decline any part of that offer. And then, of course, usually National Decision Day is May 1. So, of course, you're going to get your information about your award notifications or your award packages in enough time to make a decision as to, what's going to be most advantageous for you. And so, of course, you just want to make sure you're communicating not only with financial aid, but also admissions to let them know what decisions you're making. Now, I know due to the pandemic, there were some decision days that were extended. So some colleges and universities, extended their decision date beyond May 1st. Of course, we don't know what might happen this year. So just make sure that you're in tune to what's happening with your colleges and universities. I also want to clarify one thing that I mentioned to you when I was talking to you about loans. Just remember when we talked about the direct loans for students that were subsidized and unsubsidized, there are no credit checks done for the student. But if you're seeing on your award notification that there's a plus loan, that's for parents. That means the parent borrower is responsible for repaying that loan. There is a credit check that's done for parents. And then, of course, for the private loans that I mentioned, I want to let you know a lot of times students are not able to stand alone because many times private loans are based upon credit worthiness. So they might have to have a cosigner or surety if you're considering private or alternative loans. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. And the last piece of this timeline is really simple. Colleges and universities want to make sure that you know your rights and responsibilities and you understand loans. So prior to receiving your disbursements, you will, as a student, have to go through what we call interest loan counseling. And also before you exit the institution, you will also go through exit loan counseling. So they want to make sure that you understand that you're responsible for repaying your loans under the terms of the agreement. And they will talk to you about repayment. They will talk to you about all different types of things. What happens if you have a loan and you are having trouble making payments? So they want to make sure that you're well educated about the loan that you might be accepting.
And can I just touch on that for a little bit? Because I have a bunch of students who, if they're typically scared to complete the FAFSA because of the loans, are like, well, I don't want to take out a loan. And I heard FAFSA is, it's going to make me in debt because of the loan. Again, you don't have to accept the loan. But even so, for the students who choose like, hey, I'm going to get the loan in my package, again, they make you go through the counseling a lot of the time as a student, but they also make you sign an agreement. So it's not like, you can just accidentally take a loan. If you don't want the loan, you don't have to accept. I mean, the process that a lot of my students who did take loans out last year went through, it was like they almost didn't want the loan at the end of it because they put them through so much. But usually it's like you got to you sign an agreement because they want to make sure, you know what you're doing. So if any of y'all just had, any fears of not doing FAFSA because of that, definitely don't, because they're going to make sure you are well informed about what you're doing by taking out this loan and signing that agreement.
Yeah,
That is correct.
Sorry, Tequila.
That's okay. You can go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to add that you also have to those portals that Desire mentioned earlier that are very important to set up. That is also where you have to actually accept these loans or whatever financial aid is offered to you. So, let's say they offer you $5,000 in loan. You don't have to accept that full $5,000. You can accept 2,500 if that's more applicable to you. If you feel more comfortable with that. Again, trying to use loans as the last resort.
And I also want to just let you know that, like I said, loans can definitely be something that's positive. One, that is helping you to pay for college. Two, is that many times young adults don't have credit. And so I just remember that, once I graduated from college, I needed a car because my college car really needed to rest. So I needed a car. And so the only thing that I really had reporting for my credit report at that time was my loan. And so if you're making, good on that, you're making your payments, it can definitely help you. And when you're students, or if you're the student on the webinar today, you're trying to get an apartment, guess what? They check your credit. So, like I said, a lot of times young adults don't have a lot reporting when they finish college. So it can definitely help you in more than one way. So I just want to make sure that we're keeping some things on your radar. So make sure that you're registering for our next webinar. So we're going to do a line by line FAFSA walkthrough, and that's going to be November the 12th from 6 to 7 p.m. So, of course, you don't want to miss it. We're going to have the Director of Financial Aid from GTCC, Lisa Kortoff. She's going to be our presenter on that evening. She's a dynamic speaker, and she's going to provide some wonderful information to make sure that you not only get your FAFSA completed, but you get it submitted. And so you'll see our web address right here to make sure you register, sayyesguilford.org, and you'll see /fall college series. So I just want to make sure that you're staying connected. So here are our partners once again. You'll see Guilford County Schools, Dr. Clinton Wilson. He's over our high school counseling department. You'll see his email address. So feel free to email him if you have any questions. We also have a representative that's part of our series for the Guilford Parent Academy, Lashika White. You'll see her email address there as well. So if you have any questions regarding Guilford Parent Academy, you'll want to reach out to her. And then again, we have Say Yes Guilford, we have Brandy Kennedy and Warshay Downing. So you'll see their contact information. So please make sure that you're emailing them with any questions that you have specific to Say Yes, as well as following them on their social media pages. So you'll see they have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So make sure that you're staying connected with them. And then again, I'm Tequila Hall. I'm with CFNC. You'll see my contact information here. So I'm on Facebook as well as Instagram. You'll see my handle at the bottom of the screen here. And so I typically post most days. So make sure you're staying connected. And we have our amazing Carolina College Advising Corps representatives here. You have Desire Spurgeon. You'll see Jesse Luce and Frank Adams. So you'll see their email addresses here, and make sure you're following them. They're also on social media, and they always provide wonderful information, valuable resources.
Yes, and I forgot to add that Say Yes Guilford is also hosting a virtual college expo. We know that we aren't able to physically have a college fair this year, but we think it's valuable for you to join about 8 of our local partners in that. And so Warshay has kindly placed that registration link in the chat. It's a great opportunity if you're a junior, senior, or whatever phase you are in of the college app process, just to hear about how the admissions requirements may have changed specifically in lieu of COVID, and answer any questions you may have. So as promised, we'll allot some time. I want to thank all of our presenters today for the wealth of knowledge that they presented. And thank you all for being respectful and following the webinar etiquette for those who did in our session. And so we'll begin having opportunity for about 10 minutes of Q&A out of respect for everyone's time. So feel free to either unmute yourself or place a question in the chat. And if there's no questions, then I would know that that means that we did a great job answering everything. So income requirements specifically for Say Yes. So in that model that Workshay dropped in the chat, it does specify, we have two separate models, so it specifies the different models there. Again, if you'll email us if you have any specific questions about Say Yes.
Yes, I just want to say
Also,
this was very informative and I appreciate everyone's time. This was awesome.
Well, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate it.
I was about to add, they can also go to our YouTube channel and all the pre-recorded videos, such as the Say Yes information session, the college kickoff, and last week's session was tackling the college application process. That is all in our YouTube channel. So please visit our YouTube channel when you get a chance.
Yes, and Desire has kindly shared that flyer for the College Expo on the screen in case it got lost in the very lengthy chat that we have here. So this features the 8 colleges and universities that'll be represented. So that'll be taking place on Thursday. So coming up 3 to 4:15, a few days. And Workshay also placed the link in there. So we'll stay here for a few minutes and continue to open the floor to any questions that students may have or parents and families.
That the YouTube channel was that first state. Do we just search using Say Yes Guilford?
Um, uh, Let me see.
Yes, you can type in Say Yes Guilford in YouTube,
Okay.
or you can
Yeah.
click the link and that will take you directly to our channel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
And
thank
that link
you.
includes some of the previous recordings in the college kickoff series, but also an informational video about Say Yes for those of you asking specific questions about our scholarship model. Alrighty, well, I believe we'll remain around just for a few more minutes just to see if there are any questions that comes up as you all continue to work on your FAFSAs, or if maybe right now you're creating your FSA ID, whatever you may be doing. We're here to assist you, and we thank you all again for tuning in.
I had a quick question on
Yeah.
the FSA ID. I've created a CFNC account, but when it comes to the FSA ID, is that within the CFNC account or is that separate?
Yeah, so it's actually a separate account. Your CFNC is where you're going to be doing your college applications and also your North Carolina residency application to help determine your in-state status. But I know it's a lot of logins going in. I would definitely keep like a running notes in my phone. That's what I have to do. So your FAFSA and FSARD are sort of the same login, and then your CFNC and RDS are the same login, if that makes any type of sense.
Oh, okay. And then for the FAFSA, would you? Uh, my plan is for GTCC. They have the financial aid section in their website, but if you sign up for that, is that something that, dependent upon the income status, you get um, uh, loans that will have to be paid back, or is it more of something that's uh, like how does the FAFSA thing work in a sense?
Yeah. So it calculates, there's not like a formula like, a MX plus B, no specific
Right.
formula specifically for the FAFSA and how they calculate the income. But what happens, it asks you a series of questions, and feel free to chime in, Tequila, Desire, or anyone else. It asks you a series of questions such as like, how many students do you have attending college at the time? Like how many people are in the household, etc. And all this information, it uses that, and also the tax returns 2019 for this actual year is what it'll use to essentially determine what's called an EFC, expected family contribution. And it's this will be displayed on your student aid report that is sent to all of the colleges and universities. And so you say you're going to go to GTCC. So GTCC will get a report that Alex, the EFC, whatever the case it may be. And so based on that number, the college will then create a financial aid package that best reflects your financial need. And typically the way that it works is loans are typically added in there to help cover the cost of attendance, but that may not be the case, specifically thinking about the affordable cost of community college.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just going to say is like, if you're looking to see if you could potentially go to community college for free, depending on your income, it's definitely possible. So I would just say if once you do your FAFSA, you get back your EFC. If you are qualifying for the max amount of Pell Grant, which is $6,345 this year, that would cover the full cost of attendance for community college. But that's only if, you know, it will come down to what your family income is. But again, if once you see that Pell Grant, how you would do it for each school, just compare it to the price, the cost of attendance. That's how you'll be able to kind of calculate what it's going to cost for you to go there. And once you get your financial aid packages, so if they decide to couple it with like other institutional aid or other state grants, it could change. But for community college, typically, if you do qualify for that, again, max amount of Pell Grant, you're good. You're free with that. If that
the only thing I was going to add too is that if you're looking at how much you might qualify for need-based aid, you could always take the cost of attendance for the college that you're looking at, and once you know your EFC, you can subtract your EFC from that number, and it will tell you if you're eligible for any type of need-based aid or how much need-based aid, because the cost of attendance varies, but your EFC is going to be the same no matter which college you're going to. And so if you use that, so your cost of attendance and subtract your EFC, it'll tell you your eligibility for need-based aid. So that's a rough thing that might be helpful to you.
And Alex, I noticed this is a lot of information, but the last thing that I would add, and feel free to email us with some of the contact information shared earlier, is that even if your Pell Grant does not fully cover the cost of your tuition, depending upon your family circumstances, then Say Yes Guilford is also a local opportunity that works to support last dollar tuition, and GTCC is one of our partners. So I think it would be very beneficial for you to either follow those YouTube links or definitely tune in to our Say Yes to College Virtual College Expo, where we'll be talking about not only the Say Yes requirements, but how it works at those schools.
Okay, thank you guys so much.
No problem. Thank you. And it looks like we probably have room for one more question, out of respect for everyone's time this evening, if there are any more questions. And I apologize if y'all hear my dog. She's a little hangry right now. All right. Well, if there aren't any more questions, it seems like everyone either has the information or will reach out to us privately. So again, we appreciate you all tuning in tonight. And thank you again. We hope that you all tune into our future events and our future programs specifically related to the FAFSA. So hope to see you all on November 12th for the FAFSA walkthrough. Thank you.